Glenn, congratulations on receiving your second career Emmy nomination for your work on the show Galavant. Uh, you're welcome. So first of all, give us a reaction to your nomination. How did it feel hearing that you'd been nominated for writing a song for this show?
Just overwhelming happiness. It's been such a joy working on this show. Probably the most fun I've ever had working on any project. And so to be recognized by the community for something that gave me such a huge amount of happiness to work on is just the icing on the cake.
Well, congratulations again. You do have a bit of an awards history as I was looking up your biography before this interview. You were previously nominated for another Emmy for your work with Mr. Menken as a songwriter. Mm-hmm. You've been nominated for an Oscar for Tangled, which you won a Grammy for. You've gotten 3 Tony nominations in your career. Mm-hmm. So what does that kind of recognition mean for you?
Well, I think that and I know that everybody says this, but the joy really is in doing the work, and the fun is in doing the work, and that's sort of its own reward in a lot of ways. What the recognition does is it just sort of lets you know you're on the right track a little bit. It gives you that little extra boost of confidence to take more chances, to try things you might not have tried before, to go off in directions that you might not have thought possible. Certainly with something like Galavant, which was a big leap off of a cliff. Nobody really knew what that was going to be. Nobody had really tried anything like it on network television before. And having all of that behind us enabled me and Alan to say, go with us on this trip. Who knows what it's going to be? But whatever it is, it's going to be fun, and we're going to do it right.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about Galavant. It was this wonderful original musical comedy for TV, which has sadly ended. But talk a bit about what the show was and what it developed into.
Well, the genesis of the show was the fact that Alan and myself had worked with Dan Fogelman on the movie Tangled for Disney. And we all had such a great time working on that, and really developed with Dan a sense of how to write a musical together, which is something that you really do need to sort of experience as a team to figure out how to do. And once we had done that, we kind of wanted to do more, but Dan had disappeared into the television world with Neighbors. And shortly after that, he called us up and said, I'm thinking of doing a musical episode. Would you guys be interested in climbing on board? To which we instantly said yes. And it was one of those, we had a week to write the music and to work with the writers and to get it recorded. And it was so much fun that while we were recording the song, we all sat there with the ABC executives and said, why don't we come up with a way to do this every week? Because we're just having a blast. And so Dan and I went off by ourselves and tried to come up with some sort of idea. And every single thing we thought of was, well, do people really want to hear lawyers singing or doctors singing or whatever, all the standard tropes that you think of for network television. Until finally I said, I don't know, Dan, well, one thing that everybody is used to hearing people burst into song with are Disney fairy tales. And Dan said, oh my God, I've got an idea that is that. Let me send you 10 pages that I've already written. And what he sent was what turned out to be the first 10 pages of the Galavant pilot. And I read it and said, oh my God, this is amazing, and sent it to Alan. He said, can we start now? And we just went off and running, knowing that what we were doing was sort of a takeoff on Disney, a takeoff on fairy tales, and just spoofing it and going meta with it.
Mm-hmm. I should say that Neighbors is what you received your first Emmy nomination for. I wrote that down in my notes, but I could not read my own handwriting. And so anyway,
yeah.
So you wrote original songs for all, I think it was 18 episodes of this show?
It was all 18 episodes. I think it was something like, for all 18 episodes, 65 songs.
My God, wow.
And because we were on a sitcom schedule, we basically had 3 months each season to write 30 plus songs, not including, that doesn't include songs that the network might have killed or songs that we wrote that didn't quite fit in. So just with the final 35 that we used each season was in 3 months. It was a song every other day, which is a crazy, crazy schedule. We did nothing all summer for 2 summers in a row, but eat, sleep, and write.
My God. So in regards to the song that you're nominated for, tell us a little bit about the genesis of that song. First of all, why did you choose that one to submit for Emmy consideration?
Well, So as some people know, but not everybody, Galavant had a pretty great first season, but our numbers weren't quite where they would need to be for sort of what you would expect a renewal. And yet they were good for its time slot, and they were good for the audience that we were going for. So up until the last minute, we had no idea whether or not we would be renewed or not. And a lot of the websites that predict this, the Bear and all those sort of things, were fairly certain that we were going to get canceled. And when we didn't, we had a huge sense of vindication and wanted to sort of just spike the football a bit and celebrate the fact that this show that nobody thought was going to live was going to get another shot. And so Dan said, let's just do an extravaganza celebrating the fact that we're back for a new season and make it as big and vaudeville as we can. During the first season, we had figured out that our show was all about the meta, all about playing with the fact that it was a musical. Our characters know that they're in a musical. So how do we give our fans, how do we give a sort of a wrapped present to our fans? How do we bring in people who hadn't seen it before up to speed on what the show would be? And that turned into a new season, which is almost as much a comment on itself as it is a song that brings the audience back up to speed and moves us forward in the story. Mm-hmm. Once we had written it, it just felt so Galavant. It felt so emblematic of what the show was that it just felt, out of everything in the season, this really is where we live. This is sort of our voice and the best representative of what the show is.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about your collaboration with Alan Menken. You two have been working together for a while now. First of all, how did you two get together and start collaborating? And second of all, what is that collaboration like?
So we started working together about 18 years ago, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a generation below Alan, so I had grown up hearing his songs. Little Mermaid came out when I was in college. So, if you're a songwriter at that age and you're just starting out into what would be a professional career, he was sort of the gold standard. And I had done a show with another composer that Disney had gotten wind of and sent somebody to hear. And they asked me and that other composer to come in and to do some songs for a movie that was not going to get made. It was a Marco Polo by a then unknown screenwriter named Joss Whedon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was that long ago. And it was, of course, absolutely brilliant. But we wrote songs for it that were pretty great, I have to say. And the Disney people said, thank you. And those songs went into a drawer somewhere. And I was sitting by my phone waiting for something to happen, and nothing was happening. So I thought, well, let's kickstart this a bit. And I called Alan's manager and I said, look, I just did this stuff for Disney. I've got my foot in the door. I love working for them. They seem to like working for me. Is there anything that, any way that you can help me get the rest of my leg into that door? And so he took me on as a client. And a few months later, he said, okay, sit down. But Disney is doing a prequel to Roger Rabbit. Alan's doing the music. It's not working out with their current lyricist. Disney wants you to come on board. How do you feel about that? And I said, how do I feel about that? Are you kidding? So I went up to meet with Alan. And when you work with Alan, you go up to his house and studio up in upstate New York. You're ushered into this room with, the 8 Oscars and the 12 Grammys and the Golden Globe. I mean, it's a room full of hardware. It's immensely intimidating. And I had this, on a scrap of paper, this little lyric I'd written. I looked at the script and had written sort of well, here's an idea. And I sat down with him and I handed it to him and he said, okay, let's see what we got. We put it up on the piano and started to play, and it was like, oh my God, I just wrote an Alan Menken song. Oh my God. And we just clicked. For some reason, my voice and his voice, we just come from the same place. We both have a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of pop musical styles throughout the 20th and 21st century. And so when we sit down and we can say, well, we want it to sound like, Portuguese fado music or a Cuban merengue or whatever it is that we need it to sound like, we instantly have in our heads a sense of what that is and how to make it sound like that style. So we just chime together very well. He's like a pure intuition when he sits at the piano. He'll sit down, he'll say, I want it to feel like somebody crying in a rainstorm, and then boom, it just comes out of him and it feels like somebody crying in a rainstorm. I'm all head. I'm the exact opposite of him. If you asked me to come with a lyric on the spot, I would look at my hands. But if I go away for a couple of days, I can figure out exactly how to shape that raw piece of music that he gives me to match up with the story, with the voice of the characters, with the themes of the story. So head and heart, we work together like that. Usually when we sit down to work on a song, we'll sit down at the piano together. I'll give him a title or a couple of lines. He'll immediately start playing, and I'll say, okay, that's exactly what I was talking about, or it's not quite that. Can you give me a little bit more of a Motown feel to it? He goes, oh, like this? And, immediately out of his fingers. Usually he'll come up with the song within the first 20 minutes that we're together, and he'll spend the next couple of hours making it, shaping it, putting together a demo, giving it rhythm, giving it style, and then I'll take that raw piece of music home with me. I'll spend a couple of days throwing in the lyrics, then we meet back together and then we shape it again, changing the melody slightly, changing the lyrics slightly until we have a finished piece. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of how it works most of the time.
So I wonder if you could delve a little bit more into storytelling through song, because that's a wonderful thing about musical theater, is that the characters have all these emotions and things they're going through, and the only way they can express it is through singing a song. So can you talk a bit about telling a story in a song?
Well, when a lyric works, and when a song works in a musical, it's because the emotion has risen to such a pitch that you need to go beyond what mere words can do. Music provides the subtext, the words provide the text. They can work together or they can work at cross purposes depending on what you're trying to do. But what you're looking to do is to boil the story down into a thematic sort of crux, figure out what that subtext is that lifts it up out of the realm of just ordinary dialogue, and then verbally make it match with what the characters sound like, make it match with the speed and the pace and the style of the storytelling so that it feels seamless. When it works, it feels effortless. It feels like it was barely even written. And it feels like the writers and the songwriters were the same person. In fact, if it works, you don't even think about the writing. You just think about the character spontaneously bursting into song. And what it does, I don't remember who said this, but one of the famous songwriters said that what lyrics are good at are expressing an idea. And what music is good at is expressing a feeling. And when they come together the right way, what they make you do is feel an idea. And when you can do that for an audience, when you can make them not just intellectually get the idea, but feel it in their bones, feel that emotion, feel that story point, feel that twist that you're trying to get to them, then you've succeeded and they're just along for the ride.
I think that's a really great way of putting it. Shifting gears a little slightly, you are in theaters right now. You wrote a song, you and Mr. Menken wrote a song for Sausage Party, which is this really, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, but it's this wonderful musical theater moment. It's a song that they sing every day before the grocery store opens. So could you tell us a little bit about writing that song? Where did that come from?
Well, we had been working on a project at DreamWorks with Conrad Vernon, and he was simultaneously working on Sausage Party with Seth and Evan and those guys. And he said to us, oh, we're doing this song, and you guys will think this is funny, but we're trying to do a Disney song at the beginning of the movie. And we said, well, we'll do that for you if you want. He said, are you sure? Because we're going to be parodying it and making fun of it. And Alan, to his credit, said, sign me up. I'm all in for making fun of what I do. We had, I think, just started working on Galavant at that point. And we had been very encouraged by Paul Lee, who was running the network at the time. He said, go for an adult audience. Let's go for that R rating. Not that you're going to have an R rating on network television, and certainly not at 8 o'clock on Sundays, but we were very much encouraged, talk to that 18 to 35 demographic. And so Galavant has a lot of sort of body humor and a lot of references that are a little bit over the line. With Sausage Party, it was like, let's find that line and let's just blow a hole in it and let it all just rush way past. So, I mean, we went as far beyond that line as we possibly could, and had an absolute ball doing it. Mm-hmm. Once we had written the actual song, then Seth and Evan and the writers of the film came back on board, and they said, okay, this is great. Now let us get our hands on it and get some of our stink on it. And so it was sort of a group effort to get to where we ended up, but so much fun. And obviously what's on that screen is, just outrageous, beyond outrageous.
It certainly is. So what's next for you guys? Any plans to return to television with a new musical, or maybe bring back Galavant on another platform? Or
Well, we're certainly still talking about Galavant, and we've already begun talking about how we can make it work as a Broadway musical or a stage show of some kind, and lots of ideas about that. And I've been talking to some of the writers from Galavant about a new television idea. We haven't pitched anything yet, but we're sort of we would both, Alan and I would both love to go back to that medium. As I said, the most fun we've ever had. Just when you work on a theater piece, you could be. We spent 8 years working on The Little Mermaid. We spent 4 years before Sister Act got to Broadway. We're working on a show now, A Bronx Tale, which is opening in December. It's our 4th year of working on it.
is that from the De Niro movie, or?
On Thursday. And just knowing that, just having that sense of spontaneity, that sense of the idea is happening, it's happening now, strike while the iron is hot, get it into the hot hands of the actors, get it down, so exciting, so much fun, such a different way of working, and we would love to get back there. So yeah, I mean, we've got some ideas, and hopefully something will happen soon.
Well, I certainly can't wait to see what happens next. Thank you so much, and congratulations
Absolutely.
again. And it was a pleasure talking to you. You're welcome.
Pleasure talking to you too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.